We're speaking to Datuk Dr Zulkifli Ismail this morning. He's a consultant pediatrician and also the technical chairman for Immunize for Life. And good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Now, the topic of vaccines, especially for children, is quite a contentious one, right? We have parents taking opposing views. Others are a bit overwhelmed and maybe confused by it. But can you please explain to us why vaccines are important for children?
Yeah, sure. I think most parents know that vaccines are important because basically we build immunity, and the immunity is actually is very specific to certain diseases. So if you give, say, if you're a baby and you're given the BCG vaccine and the hepatitis B vaccine, it's just to protect protect you against those diseases. And all of us would have been given the BCG vaccine anyway, So, and a lot of us have lived up to the number of years that we are now. I mean, I've passed my 60th birthday already, and some years ago. And and I had the BCG vaccine, I had the diphtheria vaccine, I had the whooping cough vaccine, I had tetanus vaccine, and I had all the other vaccines in the past. So, and I've had multiple doses of hepatitis B because I had to work in places where I needed to have the vaccine. So, and if that is not an example, then there are other parents who've also got it. So now, as you say, it's a contentious issue because people have fears that the vaccine causes other diseases. And I think we can discuss that later when we get to that part of the topic.
Yeah, but so all the vaccines that you mentioned earlier for these diseases, they are recommended vaccines for all Malaysians.
Yes. Those the recommended vaccines, as you know, will be at birth. The child will be given hepatitis B and BCG, and then at 1 month they'll be given hepatitis B, and then at the 2 months they will be given the 5-in-1, which is made up of diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough, Haemophilus influenzae type B, and polio. And then they'll be given those same 5 for the next 3 months, and then after that another hepatitis B at the 6th month. Then at 9 months the baby gets the mumps, measles, and rubella, the 3 diseases. And then at 1 year another dose of mumps, measles, rubella, and then 1.5 years they get the same 5-in-1 again. So this is what's given by the Ministry of Health, and this is what people say is the so-called compulsory ones. But then there are other vaccines that we also would recommend, and these include the pneumococcal vaccine, which the government promised to start this year in June, but we're not sure how it's happening now, or whether that's happening or not. And then there's the influenza vaccine that protects against influenza, and there's also meningococcus. There are a few more vaccines that rotavirus vaccine, which may or may not really be necessary, but you can discuss that with your pediatrician, and then we'll tell you what's needed and what's really priority.
I know there's a timeline set by the Ministry of Health, like you said, at 1 month is this, 2nd month is this. Why is it important to schedule these vaccinations? And if we do miss, or if we delay one or two of these vaccination, will there be any serious health and growth implications for our children?
Yeah. That's a good question, because that has happened now with this COVID pandemic and then the MCO. A lot of parents have deferred the vaccines, and the reason why is given at birth, at 1 month, at 2 months, and specific times is, number one, for ease of memory. For the mothers, easier for them to remember every month they have to come for the vaccines. But number two is also to protect the diseases that happen early in life. We used to get tetanus at birth. We used to see children with tetanus, neonatal tetanus. We used to see hepatitis B being transferred from a positive mother to a child at birth. So that's the reason why this is given at birth, hepatitis B. And then we also see diphtheria in children less than 3 months of age. So These are the reasons why these vaccines are given at these ages. But if parents have missed these vaccines, it doesn't mean that they cannot come in for the vaccine again, because what we do is we just continue with the schedule. So if they have got the first dose and they miss the second dose and they miss the third dose, and they missed it by say 2 months, and the child had been well, so we just continue with the second dose and the third dose subsequently. So that's I think there's no issue. So that's the reason why we give it early on for these children.
But I'm just thinking, in your opinion, why are some parents anti-vaxxers? If all vaccines have been proven to help improve our children's health.
Yeah. The anti-vaccine movement actually is a big movement in the United States. And it's from there is coming here, and people here are just following and listening to that group only. There is another group that says vaccines are good and children are protected, but that group is small but it's loud. There are issues regarding some vaccines which have been brought up, and the most controversial and the most famous of all is the relationship of the mumps, measles, rubella, or MMR vaccine and autism. And this was created by a paper that was published, I think it was in the 1980s, by Andrew Wakefield in the Lancet. Now, you have to realize that 12 years later, the Lancet journal actually withdrew that paper. 12 years. It took 12 years to do that. But 6 years after that, there was a reporter who actually reported on the fake that went through that paper. So this was 6 years. So there was a lapse of about 12 years before, and everybody believed that aspect because Lancet. So the Lancet withdrew it, but nobody even bothered to actually say that it's been withdrawn, and they keep harping on it. Now there are other issues. There are people who say that children have got got other infections, got other diseases from the vaccine, but these have not been conclusively proved. And compared to the small number that have reported this, there are millions of others that have got the vaccines and have got no problems. So okay, going back to your question, why do parents believe or why do parents become anti-vaxxers? They don't really become anti-vaxxers. They are just they may have ideas about vaccines. They may be just vaccine hesitant. So they're not exactly vaccine refusers. So there's a difference between refusers, hesitant, and vaxxers and anti-vaxxers. So the vaccine hesitant mothers are the ones that are not sure. So they don't know where to get the information from. Sometimes they believe the doctors if they develop a rapport with the doctors. But then some doctors may not be the kind of people that he likes. So that ends up with then you have a problem. So they should find a doctor whom they can trust, and who gives honest opinions about the vaccines. We cannot tell the parents that, oh, the vaccines are very safe, your child going to be no problem, you're not going to have a fever, you're not going to. That's not true. The child may have a fever. In about 80% of the cases, they don't have a fever, so that's okay. And if they have a fever, the doctor has to be there or if they have a problem, then the doctor has to be there to treat it or to refer it to the appropriate people. So I think it's important that parents get a very balanced view rather than look at anti-vaxxers only. Like I said, their voice is loud, but their number is small. So, but there are other people in mainstream that actually gives reasonable advice regarding vaccine.
No, in Malaysia, I'm not sure about this. Isn't it? It's not just a requirement; it's actually required by law that your kids are vaccinated, right?
No, that's not really mandatory now. There was a move to do that when we had the previous Minister of Health, but there was so much of opposition from people. And there's law only in certain countries. I think in Italy, in France, it's a law, and a parent had been sent to jail because the child got measles, and then the measles spread to other children in the kindergarten. And Australia was trying to make it law, but then obviously there's some opposition from people. So not many countries. Well, there are some countries that make it law. I mean, like Brunei, Singapore, South Korea. They have made laws out of vaccination, and we tried to do that, but then as usual, the anti-vaxxers went to see the minister and then said, gave their point of view, and before that could happen, the government changed.
Oh, but I thought that children cannot register in public schools, in government schools, unless they show proof that they have all the required vaccinations.
Yeah, we cannot under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the CRC, Convention on the Rights of the Child. The government cannot deprive any child of primary education. So by right that cannot happen.
I see.
But the schools, some private schools actually maintain that you have to have the child vaccinated before they come in. But for public schools, they actually look at the vaccination schedule, and then they advise the parents that they have to get those vaccines, or there will be a nurse who will come to give the vaccination. So when they come to give the double antigen, the DT vaccine to the other children and the MMR vaccine at school, they will give the ones that they have missed as well.
If you had your way, would you make it law though?
Okay. Well, if I had my way, I think I would make it law. But then, I'm pretty liberal in my thinking. So I think people should have the option to make up their minds and decide for themselves.
Yeah.
And I was actually trying to push for it to become a part of the law.
Do you think our recommended vaccination list has to be updated with the times? Because I mean, all these diseases were from way back when, right? During our time and even your time. Do you think it has to be updated for current diseases?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about my time and your time. Okay. Now it has been updated because when during my time it was just the triple antigen. There was no HIP. There was no injectable polio. We had drops of polio, which was even worse, which had more side effects. And actually, then in 1989 we actually introduced hepatitis. We introduced HIP. That was HIP, and then we introduced hepatitis B, and we introduced hepatitis B in 1989. And then we subsequently introduced, in 2002, we introduced the 5-in-1 and so on. So it's actually been upgraded very, very well. And just for your information and for the information of your listeners, Malaysia's immunization schedule is among the best, if not the best, in the region. So we're very proud of that, and we actually have exceeded Singapore.
Wow. Okay. Now, speaking about vaccines that are outside of the required list, I remember you said something about rotavirus, pneumococcal, influenza. How necessary are those that are not in the required list?
Okay. We have been pushing for pneumococcal vaccine since 2005. And now we're trying to, we're getting it in the schedule, hopefully. So that's how much we feel that is important, because pneumococcal disease has a lot of complications, and they get pneumonia, they get meningitis, and so on. So we've been pushing for that, and we were very glad that the government actually finally decided to introduce it into the program. And then as far as rotavirus is concerned, that is, there are a lot of countries that are actually using rotavirus vaccine now, and it's helped to reduce the amount of diarrhea associated with rotavirus. Influenza vaccine is something that needs to be given every year. So we would recommend, when we had an outbreak in late last year, sometime in October, November, we had a surge of influenza vaccines being utilized because there was this fear that and every child and almost every child that was admitted in our wards here actually turned out to be either influenza A or influenza B. So and I think and
I
then there was
know.
this fear.
I got sucked in that fear as well. My whole family, I brought my children who were 8 and 3 for the flu vaccine as well, and it was sold out. I was like on the waiting list for a month.
Exactly. And we actually this hospital we actually we wanted to encourage it, so we actually gave very low prices for the vaccine. So the uptake was so high that we couldn't cope with it. So and neither could the company. So the thing with influenza is that it changes. The strains change every year. So because of that, the vaccine also has to change the strains every year. So that's the reason why we need to get it every year. And if you have a parent who is about 60 like me, so they need to have that vaccine every year. All right. I mean, we as medical professionals, we've been getting it every year anyway, since we were young, because we need that. We are very high exposure, and we have been getting it ourselves. So if we've been getting it ourselves, there's no reason why somebody, a member of the public, should be afraid of getting it every year as well.
So if you don't go for it annually every year and you only go for it like for me, I've never had a flu shot, let's just say in the past 40 years, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, I hear you need to get a flu shot. Is it still as effective compared to if you go for it every single year?
Yes, it will. They will, at least it will protect you for that year. So
Right.
you should get it.
It's like a membership.
Now, doctor, lastly, what advice would you give to maybe soon-to-be parents or new parents or parents who are still confused or overwhelmed by vaccinations? Why should they vaccinate their child?
Okay. Well, first of all, if you're expecting a child, then read up all that there is to read about the vaccination and about childcare, because there's a program I run which is called Positive Parenting, and parents can actually log into that. It's called this is www.mypositiveparenting.org, I think. mypositiveparenting.org. Yeah. So and they can get advice there regarding everything from about childcare. Then there is also the Immunize for Life website, which is www.ifl.my, ifl.my. So Immunize for Life. So that website will actually give you everything that you need to know about vaccinations. There are videos there. There are things that discuss diseases, vaccine preventable diseases, and there are almost everything that you need to know about vaccination. Then, and I think parents should actually learn it before the baby is born. And when the baby is born, then they should actually discuss with the doctors regarding vaccination, because it's something that they don't discuss. Most parents don't. Some do, but most parents don't. And the ones who come and discuss with us are the ones who have heard all sorts of other news from outside. So, and I think it's important that they follow the schedule, because it's for the child's future. And then if there are other vaccinations like the pneumococcal, rotavirus, or the influenza vaccines, then discuss it with the doctor, because those things would be recommended as well. We call it the we don't call it the optional vaccines. We call it the other recommended vaccines. Okay? And,
Complementary, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. The advice.
Is it called?
So vaccinate. Don't not vaccinate. Vaccinate your kids.
Sorry?
So vaccinate your kids, right? Do not vaccinate.
Yeah, that's the short answer.
All right. Thank you so much, Datuk Dr Zulkifli, for speaking to us.
Oh, I forgot to mention.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Regarding the, we've got this program, a campaign now called An Act of Love for the Making Flu Vaccination My New Normal National Pledge campaign. So it's on the website of www.actoflove.ifl.my. It's a program of Immunize for Life as well.
Right.
So, thank you.
All right.
All right.
I'm gonna go get my flu shot after this.
Okay. Off the record, is there such a thing? I remember putting
Off
that.
the record, let me
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
the
I
record.
remember